So it's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I'm back today with something that I've been threatening to do for quite a period of time. And this is a scouting series of players that I like, that Villa haven't been linked to, but players I think could really offer Steven Gerrard's team something new, something different, and something that could really propel us up the league, I think, over the next season or next 2 seasons or whenever, if this pipe dream ever came true. And we did sign some of these players. And the first one that I want to talk about today is somebody that, if anybody follows me on Twitter, will know that I've got a real affection for Guido Rodriguez, central defensive midfielder from Betis, but also plays in the Argentinian national team. And why do I like somebody like Guido Rodriguez? I'm drawn to the fact that he just doesn't like the finer parts of the game. And I think that sometimes a team like Aston Villa have been lacking in the department of needing an enforcer, needing somebody who can come in there and can, stamp his authority in a game from the point of view of being, I suppose, being a stopper, and stemming any gaps and stemming the blood flow, should I say, in games whereby maybe we've lost the upper hand or we've lost possessions and the possession battle against top teams. And having somebody who can come in there and can solidify it, can lead from that position in defence, can organise that defensive midfield position, slot back in between the back two to create a back three, and just has that all about nous and awareness of where to be. Somebody like Guido Rodriguez, I think, could be a real good asset in this Aston Villa team. I know we've been linked with number 8s, and I know that there's been messages that have come out of Villa Park to say that we're looking at more number 8s, but for my money, we only have one true number 6 that can do it all within the club, and that's Boubacar Kamara. And just as an aside, Boubacar Kamara has played fantastically for France the last 2 games that he's played. He's played well alongside somebody like a Guendouzi, and he's played alongside Chimeni as well, those 2 types of players. And both of those players are not out and out 8s as such. They do like to mix in and do that pivot role, that double pivot role for France. And I'm wondering, if we are to get the best out of somebody like Boubacar Kamara, do we need to just play him on an island? If you guys have watched the podcast I did with Trenton O'Reilly previously, he says that the best way to play him is to give him some sort of support in there and let him pass that ball. Let Boubacar Kamara pass that ball and let him cut out passing lanes as well. And maybe to have somebody like a Guido Rodriguez in there, I think, could be a real shrewd decision from Aston Villa, as opposed to getting an out-and-out number 8 who will only ever progress the ball forward. Because if we think about it, and if Douglas Luiz does stay, I think he's going to be propelled into that number 8 position, or as a number 8 option. Same with John McGinn, same with Jacob Ramsey. And when we've got somebody like Guido Rodriguez, it will free them to move forward throughout the field and to move into the attacking third a small bit more. If anybody here wants to watch Guido Rodriguez and see why I like him so much, I would implore you to watch his games for Argentina. And I think that's a true reflection of how we would see him unleash kind of our attacking talent in Aston Villa, how he does it for Argentina. And the reason I would say that is because he plays in there alongside Leandro Paredes, and they play in like a 4-2-3-1 type situation. Or sometimes they play kind of a flatter midfield as well, like Steven Gerrard does. But since he's come into the team, Guido Rodriguez has come into the team, he's played 24 games for Argentina. And since he's done that, he's allowed the more attacking flair players, the Messis, the Lo Celsos, the Angel Di Marias, the Julian Alvarez's, all these guys, the array of talent, the Paulo Dybalas, the array of talent that Argentina have. He's allowed them to do what they do best and play on the front foot further forward. It's also allowed the team to put more attacking players in there to allow them to attack and to be more attack-minded when needs be. And it's seen them go on this massive long run of being undefeated. And I think there's merit in that. And I think there's merit in why somebody like Guido Rodriguez could come in, hit the ground running with Aston Villa, but also more so hit the ground running within the Premier League. Because I think he's got a lot of skills that we just don't have within this team at the moment. Namely, his ability to read the game. his ability to know when to drop between the back two, his ability to know when to play sideline to sideline as a defensive midfielder, his ability to know when to actually go forward, when to engage above the halfway line, which is something that he doesn't do an awful lot. But when he does do it, he seems to do it at the right time. He's not action defensive midfielder, as in he gets around the field, he pressures at an unbelievably high rate. Yes, some of those pressures are unsuccessful, but he puts that pressure on. He's in the right place at the right time. And it goes to show that his reading of the game is fantastic. But when you watch him play for Betis as well, you see that his ability to be able to step back into the back three and to retreat back in there and not be that guy that has to always, be up there helping out his attacking players. He knows his limitations, and he retreats back into that back two to form a back three, which is really interesting as well, because when you look at the Betis team, they like to go forward with their wing backs, specifically Hector Bellerin. Everybody watching the podcast here will be familiar with Hector Bellerin. He loves to bomb up that wing and get forward and try and get crosses into the box and get in around there, and it leaves two people at the back. And to have somebody like Guido Rodriguez that can slot back in there into that back three and knows that he needs to protect them is fantastic. And that's something Aston Villa have done really well over the last 12 to 18 months. Douglas Luiz isn't that man. We think we've proven it in some of the podcasts we've done previously. Marvelous Nakamba does do it okay. He does, like, we have seen a better structure when Marvelous Nakamba is in there. But I personally feel that over the next 12 to 18 months, if we are going to kick on, players like Marvelous Nakamba they're fine, they're great, but I think we can upgrade on sixes and eights across the board, I think, within our midfield. And I think there's nobody really in our midfield, bar Jacob Ramsey, and probably, I think, John McGinn as well, because I think he's done a solid for this midfield and done a lot of the donkey work that that have probably seen his own performances stemmed in the past 12 months. But I think bar those two guys, I think changes our foot within this midfield, and somebody like Guido Rodriguez is somebody that I would look at to come in to be able to play that position. Let's take a look at some of his numbers. So Guido Rodriguez, as I said, he is a born-bred defensive midfielder, and he does what he does well, but he plays in that withdrawn defensive midfielder role, but he's also able to progress the ball forward. And we will look at his possession and passing stats in a moment. But the things that jump off the page here is that he just tackles at an unbelievable clip. 3.22 tackles per game puts him in the top 11% in Europe amongst all midfielders, not just defensive midfielders. Same with pressures, top 18% in Europe, and same with aerial duel success. So he just wins the ball. That's what he does. He just wins the ball. He just wins tackles. He stops people from playing. He's that enforcer. And just look at him. I would not like to get in a fight with Guido Rodriguez. Just look at him. He looks like he's just perpetually that guy who's going to stand for. He looks like something out of 300, like a Spartan or something like that he's just up for a fight. And I think that's something that Aston Villa need, to have that kind of intimidation factor in midfield. And by God, does Guido Rodriguez bring that. Looking at his possession passing statistics, should I say, there as well. He comes in middle of the road for attempts and completions, but his pass completion percentage rate has him up there in the top 21% in all of Europe's midfielders, not just defensive midfielders. So when he gets the ball, he can recycle it really well, and that's something that I'd like to see. I like to see from a defensive midfielder, along with Boubacar Kamara, as I mentioned, who is just a metronome and a workhorse for the amount of passes and the amount of touches he gets in games. Having somebody who can also do that, but even to a lesser level like Guido Rodriguez play beside him, is quite exciting. And I think it shouldn't be ruled out that we can maybe go for 2 6s as opposed to another 8 in the coming season. When we also look at the pass completion percentage, we see that while his progressive passes are lower, they're in the bottom quartile. His progressive pass distance is almost up in the top third there, in the 62nd percentile of all midfielders within Europe. And he does pass the ball under pressure quite a lot, which you would expect for a defensive midfielder as teams push up and try and maybe catch him in possession on the edge of that midfield third and defensive third. But he doesn't lose possession that well, and that's something that we will look at when we look at his advanced statistics in a moment. Doesn't create an awful lot of shot creating actions, but then again, if he is a defensive minded midfielder, you would expect that. And he's entrusted with a decent amount of touches per game as well. So all in all, you can see there some of his points and notes that he's an absolute enforcer. He's a really aggressive type player. He builds possession. based on the fact that his pass completion rate is so high, and that he's been trusted with a decent amount of passes per game. And he knows his limitations, so he doesn't try and bomb forward, doesn't carry the ball an awful lot, but when he does, he carries it successfully, as we can see there with his successful dribble percentage as well. His big thing is, and you can't, there is no metric that we can look at, and this is why you always need to look at games when you do look at statistics. His metric, the one unmetricable, the intangible piece is he's got unbelievably good positioning, superb positioning. He's never out of position. I've very rarely seen him out of position, should I say, when I've watched him, and it's something that just pops up on the screen, that he doesn't get caught that way. As I said, he's no interest in the finer parts of the game. He's not going to Cruyff turn somebody back in that defensive third and Rabona it over the defense onto an on-running Ollie Watkins for him to slat it past the goalkeeper. He's going to just get that ball out of there, and he's going to take that safe pass. And the safe pass, as we will look at here, may not always be the short pass, but we'll see. We look at his advanced passing statistics in a moment, which is which to me was actually something that was quite interesting to look at too. And lastly, as I say, he's born and bred to withdraw into central defence if needed. He's 6'1.5 of an inch. He's good in the air, and I think that gives him the ability to be able to withdraw in to central defence if needed, if we are in that bunker mentality and holding on to a lead, which is something we have not done well for the last 18 months. So all in all, I think the benefits of having a player like Guido Rodriguez are quite high. But let's just take a look at how he stacks up against some of the players that we have already. And as always, here is Douglas Luiz, and without making light of Douglas Luiz in any shape or form, we can see here how he stacks up. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because Douglas Luiz, as I say, will be pushed up into probably an 8th position as the year goes on, and specifically if we were to sign another 6. We can see here that Rodriguez tackles at a higher rate, he pressures at a higher rate, he's better aerial success rates as well. I have neglected there to mention that Douglas Luiz has a higher pressure success rate. Also, another good thing about Guido Rodriguez is that while he is almost in the bottom quartile of the players who are dribble past in 90 minutes, he's still better at it than Douglas Luiz. So that is something I absolutely hate to see, is players that are dribble past at a decent rate throughout the course of the game. So any improvement on that for me is an improvement in the right direction. Looking at the passing statistics there, he's a better pass completion rate. He has more attempts and more completions throughout the course of a game as well. Douglas Luiz has a better progressive pass distance than Guido Rodriguez, progressive pass number, but the progressive pass distance is in Guido Rodriguez's favor. And what that means is that while he makes less passes that go forward, they do go further forward on average throughout the course of the game, which is interesting in itself. And we can see there that there's, he's entrusted with more touches throughout the course of a game than Douglas Luiz. So what he does really well, he does immeasurably better than Douglas Luiz, and that is clear from the statistics that we can see here. Once again, preface is that Douglas Luiz playing in the 6th position as opposed to where I think he's naturally more able to play in that 8th position has to be taken into account when we look at these stats. Here he is when we look at him up against Yves Basuma, and news is just broken that it looks like Yves Basuma is on his way to Tottenham for £26 million, which to me is a steal considering we were being looked at 50 million. But when we look at these two guys up against each other, I think some of the statistics that jump out here for me for Guido Rodriguez that will put him in the same echelon as Yves Basuma is that a lot of people, Basuma comes in, he plays number 8, for Brighton. Do we play him as a 6? Do we play him as an 8? That's always going to be the conversation when you have somebody like a Basuma in your team. We can see that he intercepts the ball really well. He very rarely gets dribbled past. He's got a very good pressure success rate. Guido Rodriguez, though, tackles at a higher rate. He puts in more pressures and he's better in the air. But when you look at one thing, and this is something that to me was really interesting, when we look at his passing and Guido Rodriguez's passing, he's got more progressive passes, more progressive pass distance, passes better under pressure, has better shot creating actions, and has more touches than he is Basuma. So when we look at Basuma in the 8th position, he is the midfielder that passes the ball sideways and just keeps that ball moving. Rodriguez does it, but also does it at a better rate and passes it forward and gets it forward a bit more as well. So that is quite interesting here when we look at the differences between these two players, and also some of the similarities that the two players show or have shown over the last 365 days. It's an interesting study between the two. specifically when we look at price points, because Yves Basuma, as I said, was being talked about being 50 million in last January's transfer market. We're now in June, and he's been talked about as on his way more or less to Spurs, as reported by Fabrizio Romano today, for about £26 million, which is a big drop in price. And it's a price I would imagine Guido Rodriguez would come in around the 18 to 26 million price range as well. So it is an interesting study in the two guys and what they actually bring to the team itself. Let's take a look here at some of the advanced defensive statistics. We can see that Guido Rodriguez comes in at a better defensive midfielder, at a better tackling rate and tackling in the different areas than both Douglas Luiz and Yves Basuma. So we can see here he tackles at a better rate in the defensive third and the midfield third at a high elite level. He isn't trusted with tackling in the attacking third, which we would expect also. Once again, his pressure rates in the defensive third and midfield third are at an elite rate. And we can see here they far outweigh and dwarf both Douglas Luiz and Yves Basuma in that aspect. From a passing point of view, he comes in, as we can see here, he's middle of the road until we look at something like his short pass completion rate here. So when we talk about players who just pass it sideways and pass it backwards, Guido Rodriguez doesn't just do that. His short passing rate is actually his least impressive statistic when we look at it here. And albeit he's only a small little bit lower than the likes of Douglas Luiz and Yves Basuma, so it's something he probably does need to work on. When we look at his mid-range passing and his long-range passing as well here, that's something that to me is really, really impressive, considering that when he does pass the ball forward, he's got a good progressive pass rate. And the amount of touches that he would get in the Premier League, I think, would be in around the 60 touches and around the 50 passes per game. It is interesting to see that he is able to dictate play to a certain degree from further back the field too. So lots and lots to look at here with Guido Rodriguez. And the one last statistic I'm going to leave you with here, that may not look like it's a big statistic, but the very last one there on the page is pass reception percentage, and that's the amount of times that he receives the pass and is able to recycle it successfully to another player. 95% of the time he actually receives a pass and recycles it off to somebody else. He will do it 95% of the time, and as we see, that's an upgrade on Douglas Luiz where we are at the moment, and also it's just higher than Yves Basuma as well. So he's comfortable in the reception of the ball and moving and passing that ball, as well as being the guy who does the tackling and trying to win the ball back. So that's something that's interesting to note as well. So that's just a little piece of a scouting piece on Guido Rodriguez. I think he's a real interesting player. Anybody who follows me on Twitter will know that I think that he's an unsung hero for Argentina, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in the World Cup when that comes around in November, because he is going to be somebody that's going to be on the team sheet, and he's going to be somebody that's going to be able to allow the likes of Messi and Angel Di Maria and Pablo Dybala and all those guys to progress forward. And I think every Argentinian would be hoping that they will win the World Cup this season based on the form that they have at the moment, if they can carry that in there. And one of the reasons for that form is somebody like Guido Rodriguez, since he has made his debut within that Argentinian team. So I hope you've all enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the scouting series that we're going to put together over the next 2 weeks. We will be back again tomorrow. I'm loving the daily content. I'm loving the cadence of this content, and it gives me stuff to talk about. I'm loving the interactions you guys have as well. If you guys want me to discuss any player, please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like this, please give a thumbs up. Please also subscribe to the podcast. As we say, this is a bit of fantasy. There is no link to Guido Rodriguez. If we were to somehow sign him based on what we've seen, any interest in him so far, it would be an absolute miracle. But it is interesting to look at these types of players, how they could fit in with Aston Villa Football Club, and the types of players I think that they do sign, matching those up against somebody like Guido Rodriguez, are areas that we identified that potentially could be areas of churn within the squad, I think is really interesting. So if you like this, please give it a thumbs up, and I do appreciate any suggestions on players that you would like me to do podcasts on in the future as well. So that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much, everybody, for your time. Please subscribe to the podcast, as I said, and please subscribe to the audio podcast. We will be back again tomorrow, and we will be back again on Thursday, and we'll be back again on Friday with more content. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the Villa.